Good afternoon, Bill. Thank you for joining me on the show. I'm so excited to talk with you and welcome.
Paul, great to be here. I've been looking forward to this as well. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So you are a man with a lot of companies and a very cool background, Navy SEAL.
Right.
And so I'd love for you to share for the audience a little bit about yourself and your businesses and your background.
Sure. Grew up and went to college on the East Coast. Senior year, was thinking about some more typical things. Came across a classmate who was trying to go to officer candidate school and into the SEAL teams, and came away from that. Maybe I had too many beers or something, but it came away thinking that would be awesome. And I actually ditched my other plans and focused on that. Ended up going through the training, obviously, and then spending 9 years as an officer, or almost 9 years as an officer in the SEAL teams, commanding SEAL platoons, other special operations forces on, training, operations, exercises, all of that globally. So a lot of times South America and then over in Europe and Bosnia and such. All pre 9/11 in the 90s.
Okay.
So did that, used a little bit more school as a reset point, and then came out to Wisconsin with GE Healthcare, Six Sigma black belt here, global product manager. Left that after a number of years to go help run a couple of private equity backed companies, smaller. At the time, everything was smaller than GE.
Of course.
But always had the ambition to buy and grow a company or companies. And, when you have that kind of ambition, you've got to both figure out how to acquire the skill set to do it successfully, and acquire the capital. So that was that journey. Did a 2-year acquisition search, looked about 140 companies, closed on Pindel in 2012, so just over 10 years, and we just celebrated our 75th anniversary as a company. Happy to go into any details around what we originally were and the evolution, but I'll cue off you.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for your service.
Loved it. Thank you.
So you bought a company that at the time was 65 years old.
Yep.
What was that like coming into a very storied, probably, I imagine, kind of traditional company? Tell me what it was like at the time and what your story has been. What did Pindel look like when you bought it? Sort of employees, machines, revenue, whatever you want to share. And then kind of what's evolved in the last 10, 11 years.
We probably had about 75 employees at the time. The company had, been started with Acme Gridley multi-spindle screw machines, and still had them in one plant. I think it was like 23 or 24. And then the other plant was all secondary equipment. So some CNCs, mills, lathes, 3 Swisses, but most of the other pieces of equipment were lathes, mills, chuckers. And the model was, there's so much efficiency of cycle time with multi-spindles. The model was blank parts out of the multi-spindle and take them over to the other plant to do secondary operations, which is, it's a strategy to get into, lower price points, but they were, and look, it worked for 65 years, which is great, and got, a lot of spindles at work and all. But I came in, or I developed over time a little different strategy of getting the equipment to do parts complete and letting the multi-spindles focus on the volume and the type of parts, the complexity of parts that allowed them to also do parts complete. So we've gone from, a world where we probably had God, it must have been like a couple hundred, pans of, we called them whip parts. So
Okay.
parts that had blanked off the multi-spindles that were waiting for the
Sure.
secondary ops, when the timing would work to apply that extra value.
Hmm.
You know, went from that, down to like 3 pans. So it's,
Sure.
we've
Because
completely,
everything's coming off complete.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
And with that, we've had a fun, evolution in terms of the customers, in terms of the part types. And with our, we, at the time I acquired, there's about $1.5 million in outside machining spend, typically the more complex parts, honestly. So I saw that as a pool of money that would allow me to start to buy Swift machines.
Hmm.
It's going to start with one.
Yep.
Do insource some of those parts that we were outsourcing. That not paying someone else to make them allowed us to pay for the machines, and also you weren't going to spend all of that, capacity on those insourced parts. So it gave you, so it's sort of a virtuous cycle upward of invest in the machine, insource, get new customers parts, invest in the machine, and now we have, 15, 16, another one came in last week, another one, a new Sugami 386 in like 3 weeks. So,
Oh,
well,
nice.
good things. And,
Yeah.
and the complexity of the parts has really, gone up a ton, which is great, because our niche, so to speak, now, Mark, the prior owner, who was awesome with this, multi-year transition with me, really cared. It was
Hmm.
probably it was 2 years of full time, 3 years of part time. Great transfer of knowledge, customers, employees, all of that. He would say, the focus in the past was, or under his tenure, was sort of general machining. So fewer customers, broader share of their wallet, of their, machining needs,
Hmm. Right.
where we have transitioned since to many more customers and only the parts that fit that niche of
Got it.
complex parts at medium volume.
Right.
So, yeah, complexity, features, materials, tolerances, and then medium volume, sort of 1,000 to a couple million. Given the multi spindles, it gives us that extra.
I was to say, a couple million is generally not considered medium volume in most shops I talk with.
Yeah, the distinction is, we don't do automotive high.
Right.
We don't do anything that's really in that realm of over 2 million, where you
Wow.
get anything above there, the whole operations are optimized for automotive cost reduction, all of
Got
that.
it.
But we
Yeah.
also don't do prototype well. We'll do samples leading into production, but we're not good at,
Got it.
repetitive prototyping.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, fun journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And what does
And,
Pindel look like today in terms of employees and machines, stuff like that?
so we have probably on the multi-spindle side, we have, I think, 5 more multi-spindles. Our brand there is Acme Gridley.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually just got a Coochie bar feeder. So that's going to be pretty neat to have the team figure that out to get that on.
Okay.
Because our multi-spindles go up to 2 5/8. So having a bar
That's pretty
loader
good
like
size.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, from a team safety point, you don't want to be lugging. And there's a lot. We just got some new part orders there that it's going to be running the machine all the time. The last thing you want is just to potentially hurt anyone loading bars that frequently.
Sure.
On the CNC side, really our focus is complex turned parts. We continue to have a variety of mills, horizontal, some production, dual pallet production. But if you look at the investments over the past few years, it's all on the Swiss Sugami and the larger multi-axis lathe Doosan. It's interesting. There's a mentor of mine, I would call him that, from like my first 6 months of ownership, Mike Reeder down at Precision Plus, in Elkhorn. And I remember going down to him 6 months into ownership and asking him, just introduce myself. He had a great reputation, chatting.
Yeah.
At the end, I asked, do you have any advice? I'm 6 months into this. I'd love to hear. He said, yes. His advice was pick your brands, buy some new, and stick with them. And, continue your life cycle of buying that brand, combination of new and used, and just because with that exclusivity, you get loyalty, you get training, you get really a partner in your pocket, and it couldn't have been better advice. And we're there. We've got Doosan for our twin turrets, multi-axis lathes, only Tsugami Swisses, and Acme Gridley multi spindles. They're not made anymore, so they're all used.
Sure.
Yeah. But it's interesting, Paul. Having spent those years in special operations and now being in advanced manufacturing, one of the similarities that's been striking of those two worlds is that fundamentally they're both based on small, highly trained, highly cohesive teams, enabled by advanced technology, trying to achieve outsized gains, punch above their weight. A 16-man SEAL platoon through, radios, weapons, demo, you're doing something that might have taken a battalion or a division, to do, and here I have these awesome skilled machinists running Acme's, running Swiss's, running, multi-pallet mills, who are, I'd say punching above, they're all of that. They're highly trained, highly cohesive, enabled by advanced technology. And, they're doing stuff that would take a whole lot of other people and other machines to be doing. And I think that's the, I'm just incredibly optimistic about manufacturing in this country, and especially in the upper Midwest here. We've got this great ecosystem, complementary manufacturers. I machine, but I don't heat treat, plate, grind, but that's within like 15, 30 minutes. You got a highly trained, highly trainable workforce, and you layer on top of that AI and automation, and those are like augmentation tools. So, our thesis is high levels of automation, highly utilized by a highly trained, highly paid team, can ultimately come into price points at or below low-cost countries, leading to to the U.S. to be the manufacturing powerhouse to the world. Technology, whether it's the machining technology is the level of automation, or whether it is the software and the supporting services and those that are leveraging that and augmenting that digital thread that runs through manufacturing. That's the solution. That combo there. I think incredibly powerful.
Yeah, could not agree more. And especially on your assessment of just being really optimistic about North American manufacturing. I think there's such a groundswell, a big shift happening. I think COVID accelerated it, but it was already happening before that. You're right. These small specialized teams are getting outsized results with automation and great equipment and great training.
Yep. So and great software, because you can't.
Sure. Yeah.
You can't be serving customers that need complex parts without the rigor that the right software provides. And and we are all in on ProShop. So
well, thank you, sir. And I know you have other good software partners as well, like Paperless and great systems that really are essential.
I think the next tranche of the opportunity is it is taking that digital thread that runs through advanced manufacturing, from, the paperless parts to the high QA to the pro shop to the, Calypso or, Hexagon's,
Right.
CM,
CMM software. Yeah.
CMM software, sort of all the way through. You take that digital thread, and if we can figure out ways to cinch it, whether through APIs, whether through RPA, robotic process automation, things like that, that's the key to shrinking that white space and letting you get more parts in quickly, without a lot of touch of the information, much less touch of the parts.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. And, right now there's just it's sort of a green field with APIs and all the, incredible ways to connect software. And we're doing that with some of the partners you just mentioned, and trying to improve that all the time. But
we had
cool.
a fun episode about 2 years ago. We were heavy data users, so we're pulling data about our SQL Server, things like that. But the reports that we run, take like an hour and a half to refresh and all that. And that was every morning. Refresh it, store it, share it, all of that. So we had a college intern come in over the summer, and she taught herself UiPath, the robotic process automation software, implemented it here, and now those hour and a half, 2 hours of reports are all done at 1:30, 2 in the morning. It's there, hands free. It's there when people show up, and it's great. Yeah,
That's cool.
We have to use it to pull, screen scrape pro shop data to allow us to do some linkages on that data afterward with some customer orders and doing some stuff there. So it's fun.
Oh, very cool. Well, good for you. That's resourceful to do something like that. So, what is the client base that you typically serve today? Is it quite diverse in terms of industries?
Nicely, it is diverse. The heart of it, especially when I first came on board, was more Wisconsin-based companies that had been around a long time. So the Schneiders or the Rockwells, all of those, which are terrific. So industrial controls, and hydraulics. And we've additionally expanded out into defense, munitions, medical. So those are, even more in different hydraulics. It is nicely customers with demanding part needs, whether it is, the features, the tolerances, the materials, the documentation that goes with them, things like that.
So one of my prior guests, Ted Toth, really talked about just the importance of understanding your niche and then going out and finding companies that need that. And that's, that's better than being a jack of all trades. So how did you evolve to get the more diverse client base and really focus? Did you have an outside sales team? Because a lot of shops aren't super sales and marketing focused, and I get the impression that you are a bit more so. I'd love to hear a little bit how you do that.
Yeah. So great question. When I came on board, the go-to-market model was a little bit more like a traditional, multi-generation family shop, where it was the owner was primary sales, quoting, a lot of customer service, very tied to the daily operations of the business. You say sort of, evolution explains everything. In that environment, he's not going to go out or have time to get only the best customers, only the best parts. Instead, it's going to be, I've got a smaller group of customers. I'm getting their share of the wallet. I'm getting every RFQ that comes out. Because every missed RFQ is an opportunity for someone to come in on what might be a lousy part for them, but they get the relationship and come up with a soft underbelly. So I knew and I knew in discussing with him, that was not what I wanted to be doing. So pretty soon after acquiring, got the ISO 9001,
Okay.
which is nice, globally recognized standard, which actually that was a key to then taking on a referral from a mentor of mine, other industry, who referred us to our first group of manufacturing rep
Okay.
team. So at that point, a 5-person team, now a 6-person covering the upper Midwest here. And that was great. That's been and they're still very loyal to each other. That's been fantastic. We went through some of the exercises the first few years of taking parts and commitments and all that didn't turn out to be the right fit. Some of course did, but some didn't. And you learn from that, like, what is your niche, and let's go after that niche, and let's not get distracted by customers and parts that aren't in that niche. And so
Sure.
it's incredibly liberating, that opportunity to, when you get the chance to, or get to the point of defining what you want and saying no, that the needs are better served by someone else. And I'm a people and relationship person, so I know a lot of other machine shops. So I'm really happy to refer those low volume opportunities to a handful of other places who
Sure.
love low volume, and who have the mindset of, God, if the volume gets too high, it's clogging up our machines. So there's nice symbiotic relationships. So that answer your question. And now we have 2 regions, and we're working on our 3rd region right now.
Using manufacturers reps.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And what we're finding then also is the defense space, defense, aerospace, and all. That's actually an area that I've been focusing on a little bit more. Just because I have not a unique background, but differentiated in the industry. The combination of the special operations background, the veteran ownership. I own 100%. The aerospace piece. A couple of those things give a nice opportunity to articulate that value proposition to defense and aerospace companies. So, and I like that side. I like more of the strategic sale there.
Yeah. So for those that have never used a manufacturer's rep, can you just describe a little bit about what that process is like, and what types of shops it might be suitable for?
Sure.
And how to best use a relationship like that?
So, a manufacturer's rep is where the individual or the team of individuals are not employees, but rather have their own manufacturing rep company. They typically will represent a lot of, or several, loosely similar manufacturers, but not exactly similar. So what I mean by that is, they might, they'll represent, a machining principle, a injection molding principle, a forging, a casting, so in that sort of component, in terms of our reps, and reps that I think are probably good for, others listening to this podcast, they're representing, those component type manufacturers, print circuit board,
Got it.
Again,
different commodities.
Yeah. But exclusive, you have exclusivity in terms of the specific commodity. So they don't represent, our reps don't represent anyone else for machining. We only have one principle for rubber and urethane molding or casting, all of that. It's then, a commission-based relationship. So, usually sort of a standard, around sort of 5% commission. And, that's, so it can vary, but, that
Sure.
as researched out there, that's typically the model. And then,
is that
deepen the relationship.
So is that percentage maintained for all the work you ever do for those customers they bring to you, or is it like first year only, or is that in perpetuity, or what's that? It's all negotiable, I imagine.
Yeah, I think it's all negotiable. We've had the philosophy of sort of in perpetuity, not trailing it off. Ours have typically been very motivated and stayed that way. So you don't get that potential. We haven't seen that potential dynamic of, hey, I've got enough to satisfy enough commission to satisfy my needs. I'm going to sort of stop there. Right. So that hasn't been the case as much.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good model there.
And so they're clearly introducing you to customers that you would never have an opportunity to meet without them.
Correct.
Or you'd have to have a whole sales team yourself. That big overhead expense.
Or be knocking on all those doors myself, which didn't want to do. You're right. And often it's those customers are buying the other commodities that the reps represent, which is it's sort of a win-win there.
Well, very interesting. I haven't talked to a shop yet on the show that is doing that, but I know some reps. I know it can be a very successful model. The people that are good at it have fantastic relationships with all those OEMs. They're the go-to people when those companies need something, and they find good homes for those parts. And I imagine you just price that into your pricing structure, and because you're efficient, you're competitive, and it all works out.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Cool.
That's sort of the bigger pie theory. Share some of the pie, you end up with a bigger pie.
Absolutely. So you said something a little earlier that I'd love to come back to, related, I guess, to the previous owner, but you mentioned the owner tied to the daily operations of business.
Right.
And it sounds like you've tried very hard to not, buy yourself a job, right? Where you are tied to essential daily operations. And in my day job, I preach on this all the time. And I think it's so important that owners design their business processes so they are not right in the middle of them.
Right.
And so I'd love to just hear your thoughts about how you thought about that strategically from the beginning, or did that evolve over the years?
I probably thought about it the same way the whole journey, during the whole journey. However, honestly, so we're 10 years in, for the first 5 or 6 years, interesting to think about, but, I did buy myself a job. And it was sort of expected, because, the ship's heading in this direction. I want the ship to head in a different direction. Companies sort of this size, it's certainly not GE where you got thousands of people and all that. People have, full plates and all.
Yeah.
The nice part for me was that, when I was a black belt at GE, which is sort of almost like an internal change management consultant, where it's full time. You're, figuring out, with the leadership team, what are the strategic results you want, and you're working to get there. So a lot of those skills did help to drive change. When we did the ISO, very easy for me to both call in everyone, by team and, flow chart out what their process was. It served the purposes for ISO. It also taught me the business, what the processes were. So that was great. But so long story short, it was full years of driving change. And change, management team too. People, decided, that wasn't the direction they wanted to go, or things like that, which is all great. It's its own dynamic, and we've gotten to the point where we've got a great team that feels a lot of ownership. Where I'm actually trying now to consciously not be as accessible, because I think it sort of goes to that. If you're too accessible, then people will defer decisions to you, or want your input, and you're stuck there. But if you're inaccessible and you delay your responses, people will rise. If you have the right people, they'll rise up and say, "Okay, this is the way I'd go." It's interesting. So I'm very active in PMPA, Precision Machine Product Association. I'm on the board, representing the Upper Midwest, and on the executive committee. And a few years back, we had the management update, a breakout session, a speaker, and then a breakout session, who was a former nuclear submarine captain. And he wrote this book, Turn This Ship Around. And his book was about the transformation that he drove on his submarine, which, not to dive too deeply into submarine culture, but, it's nuclear, you got missiles, you got all of this, fast attack, torpedoes, you got, a whole lot that can theoretically go wrong and can kill people, it can kill a career, all of that. And so, as I understand it, the culture had, in the nuclear Navy, had shifted over time towards a lot of decisions being pushed to the captain of, "Sir, this is what we're facing, this is the data, all of this. What do you want us to do?" Captain have to make a decision, all of that.
Sure.
This author, former Navy captain, decided he was going to turn that around and start to ask people, you can't get away. You can't get away. You're on a sub, however many hundreds in the underwater. So it's not like you can be that inaccessible. But he would turn it around and say, "What do you think we should do?" And then they would be forced to give their opinion. And if it was relatively the right direction, you go, "I like it. Let's go do that." And that was a very empowering philosophy. And so I like to use, something similar to that, I can have choices in front of me, but ask the team, what do you got? What do you guys think? So for that journey of, the sort of convention, the typical machine shop owner, I think there's you got to watch out for that, because you can be sucked into micromanaging in a nuclear Navy fashion of, it's optimal. You make the decision. You're right there. Why don't you just make it? Maybe you feel no one else is going to make a decision better than you, all of that, but that leads to, a leadership tenure without a day of vacation. That dynamic, that a lot of shops have. So I think it's a worthy pursuit to enable the team, give them the data, give them the resources, and the sense of ownership one way or another to feel like they need to make the right decisions.
And do you find that the people that feel confident to make those and then make the best decisions kind of naturally rise to the top and become your leaders? Or
no, I mean, look, the leaders all feel that, but I'd like that sense of ownership, or that sense of like, I got to own the decision, to be all throughout the company. So whether it's I think the leaders of teams, the leaders of shipping or receiving, all of that, are so to answer your question, they are leaders, and so they are being asked to own those decisions. I just want to make the distinction that it's not only sort of the senior managers that who have
Yeah,
risen
yeah,
to
yeah,
that you really want to be, throughout the organization. And there's that concept of in the military, of the commander's intent. So if the intent can be clearly communicated, in general, in sort of special circumstances, whatever it might be, you'd like people to make decisions, in accordance with that intent, but specific to the situation they're facing.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I like that. Fantastic. Yeah, I've talked to shop owners who get interrupted 100 times a day because people are constantly knocking on their door to ask them things. And I've talked to owners that spend most of their time at home or on vacation, and they come in maybe 10 hours a week and just check on things, and things just run smoothly without them. And I can
Nice.
tell you which ones has sort of the better quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, learning to delegate, learning to empower your teams, learning to make them feel confident in making decisions without you is so important. So I'm glad we zoned in on that today.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you. I'd love to talk about labor, employment. Every shop that I talked with pretty much is dealing with they can't find enough skilled people. You've talked about training quite a bit. Can you talk about how your philosophy on who you hire, how much experience they have, how much of it's training that you're providing to less experienced people, the pathways to come work for your company?
Yep. Great. No, it's interesting. I've got this sort of thesis that up until the early 70s, the military, especially how it trained its non-commissioned officers, its NCOs, was roughly in line with manufacturing. That there, there wasn't as much, professional development of the NCO Corps, up until that point. It was only later in the late 50s, late 60s, I think, where, 2 more enlisted ranks, E8 and E9 were added, senior enlisted academies, rigorous boards, and all of that happened, mostly after it went to an all-volunteer force, where you weren't getting a lot of churn. Mm-hmm. And, at this point, I heard this great quote from just last weekend at a PMPA meeting from Chris Zarnick, who does.
Love Chris.
He's great, isn't he?
He's so fantastic.
We're gonna
so
have
dynamic.
Him, come down to my CEO group and talk to the team and the managers and all.
Right.
His quote about the military is, "It is the largest trainer of free-thinking individuals in the history of the world," which is the reality, because you are delegating, you want to be delegating leadership down to, E4s, E5s, E6s, 7, 8, 9. But what the military does very well is that training of, wickets, skills, leadership, all of that. And, and so our philosophy here at Pindel is everyone is looking for a profession. A profession shouldn't be just lawyers, doctors, accountants. It should be, throughout advanced manufacturing. And by a profession, it is something that's valuable, something that is enduring, and something that's transferable. Just so an accountant who works in Milwaukee that moves to Cincinnati doesn't lose all her value in making that move. Moves to a different company in Milwaukee, all that value doesn't evaporate. But it should be the same for machinists and quality technicians and industrial maintenance, that, recognition of the profession they've devoted themselves to. So we've taken some pages out of the, the NCO, military's NCO playbook, and we created what we call the Pindel Global Professional Development Program. So we have 6 levels of CNC machinist, 6 levels of multi-spindle, wow. 4 levels of industrial maintenance, 4 levels of quality technician. And into each level, we have woven tooling you online classes that are especially sort of chosen corresponding to that level of skill, shop floor qualifications, and then NIMS credentialing. So the combination there, you're getting, the knowledge, you're getting the credential, you're getting the transferability. And so it's really good. We make time weekly for, individuals to get that training. A plug, we are looking for a leader of training and development, either full, part-time, less than 65 years old, older. We actually now we expanded our ICRA medical insurance model to reimburse for Medicare premiums. So for full and part-time,
good for you.
Yep,
good for you.
Yep, that's good. So please come. That's a key role. We'd love to get that person, deep machining experience, really good trainer, sort of leading, administering that development program. But we're at the point where we can hire for attitude, train for skill. We've got a nice progression of machines that, sort of let the person, the new employee, demonstrate or learn, an expanding breadth of metrology equipment, machining technology, demonstrate their attitude, through that progression. Are they going to have the right mindset for this business? And great stories. Of movement around among different teams, upskilling, and great wage growth. So
it's wonderful.
It's been neat. And the neat part about that, we have these overlapping with 6 levels. We have overlapping pay bands that are actually pretty broad, the band, because the intent there is we don't want to have to say to people, there's only one path. And if you want to, achieve the most, you got to be, on like a senior machinist engineering path. No, there's a leadership path that is awesome. The people side, there is a high value added production machinist that, look, you might not end up programming and doing engineering and all that, but your ability to use this technology to run great parts, to use critical thinking skills, to, understand the variances in tooling and wear and, coolant, lubrication, machine, all of that to get, great parts, at volumes, is a real asset. So, we don't want to force people into paths that, aren't optimal for them.
Yeah. Wow. That sounds sophisticated and really excellent. How much time per week, as a number of hours or percentage of their time, do you anticipate people will be working on training?
So we try to set aside 1 to 2 hours a person for a team member for the tooling U. We have a room set aside where and a monitor and all that where they can do that. A lot of our, the shop floor qualifications, quite a bit of that is in the course of machining and new parts. And, we're going to bring you over here and, talk to you about how to set this bar feeder, or how to, set the guide bushing, or, on the Acme's, set the pickoff, things like that. So, those skills are getting tracked, taught and tracked. And so what I'll say though is, as an industry, and as a society, I think the next frontier is to figure out a better structure for career-long, lifelong upskilling. And just to dive very, very quickly into that. Is it okay to dive into this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So, my view is, as a society, we still seem to operate under 3 fallacies. Fallacy is just sort of inaccuracy. So, number 1, we seem to believe that a college degree is a sole credo of human dignity, which is obviously not the case. Number two, we seem to live under this fallacy that what we learn in the first 25 years of life is going to last us for the next 50. So, have all this great, K through 12 and, a few years after and all of that, and you're good to go, get out there. But the reality is no way is that going to last us. Shifts in technology, shifts in, the person's needs, all of that. It's all about, lifelong, career-long upskilling. The last fallacy is how we learn in the first 25 years of life is how we're going to learn in the next 50. And that's not the case. It's not going to be full-time school, figure out ahead of time what you want to learn, then go apply it. It's that learning is going to be local. It's going to be amongst industry hours. It's going to be short duration credentials and certificates. And it's going to be, much more much more dynamic. So I still think we need to figure out how to support that as a society, and I think there is society support because, look, there should be some financial contribution too, not the whole thing, but part of it, because every more skilled person in my company is actually a more skilled person in society. And there's a enhancement of the industrial commons there. Mm-hmm. So I think we've got to figure that out because, to your question, how much time you're spending on training, to be honest, it is really suboptimal to be, for a small, medium-sized company, to be training its own team, in all of these skills. Because, right. It's a small company. So you have maybe one person learning, one person teaching, wherever that sort of new person is coming into the continuum. So you're taking one, it's not sort of scalable in that way. And so it is expensive and, opportunity cost and all that. So I do think we need to figure out a different way of, I'm one of whatever, few hundred machine shops, in Wisconsin, southern Wisconsin, say, why aren't there like little short duration courses where I can send a new employee to get, 2 weeks of half-day classes that teach them metrology, that teach them, production machining, maybe the economics of machining, get them up to speed. And then 2 months later, I send them back for the next phase of, shop floor qualification classes and, beyond, on and on. And they'd be scalable because they're, hundreds of shops. And when, amongst that 100, 10 of them a week are going to have new employees that need to be skilled at that level and at the next level. So I don't know, just sharing some ideas.
Wow, that's an interesting concept. I hadn't heard it talked about that way. Basically, I mean, it sounds to me almost like, the technical colleges, machining programs that are more often, tailored and serving younger students coming out of high school, almost doing like a, community learning or part-time, nighttime classes or whatever, where older, more senior people in their industry that want to upskill into new areas can come in and do part-time classes. That's a great idea.
I think it'd be great. We do have one technical college here that's, getting more innovative in that regard. Chris Tremicki down at MATC, Milwaukee Area Technical College, initiated Thursday and Friday morning Swiss classes, 4 hours, over like a 10-week period. Awesome. Yeah. Send people down, they get, they drive down there, they get their 4 hours, of his progressive learning. Then they come, they spend another, 4 to 6 hours, with us, making parts, applying that knowledge, things like that. And it's great. And he's starting up 1 day a week for multi-spindle, same dynamic. So
how awesome was that? That's fantastic.
Yep. Yeah. All his initiative.
Awesome. Well, I love that we've gotten into that topic. I am cognizant of time, and I want to start kind of wrapping up into the final questions. how might you summarize some of the best decisions, best moves that you've made over the last 10 years to, position to the company that you are today?
Yep. I would say, you know, honestly, investing in technology. It's it's the single most significant thing, and honestly, probably we probably overinvest in technology, but that's okay. You're investing before you're actually going to fully utilize it.
Right.
Because if we extend that special forces analogy to this workforce, you want to be augmenting what they can do. And the only way to really do that is technology, whether it's a software, whether it's a hardware, whether it's a differently thought process. So we've had a, I think a pretty dramatic, I like to think dramatic transformation, where we, moved from, all those multi-operation parts, single done, grown the head count a little bit, but I'd say in general we're paying people a good bit more, which is great. Our adage is more value created, more value captured, and the single best way for people to create more value is through technology. So, don't skimp on that side. It's I think that move there, it can be costly, but figure out how you're going to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. So besides embracing and investing in technology, any other advice for shops earlier in their journey than you are about just best things they should be doing today to make sure they succeed like you have?
I think that the customer diversification, although challenging, is try to because 10 years in, you got all sorts of cycles: low oil and gas, auto, this that, and diversification definitely helps. And trying to think a little bit differently about about who their ideal customer is, which is often as much about figuring out who they ideally want to be. But don't be all things to all people. And I guess if I had to give another piece of advice, it would be let go of parts that aren't a good fit. Just be honest with yourself, be honest with the customer,
yes.
And do that, because it's not a good fit for a reason, and you'd be better off not having it.
Yep. Sage advice all the way around. In our shop, we called that the kill the loser process.
Right.
We had those loser jobs and we axed them, get them off your books, get them out of your company.
Yep.
And we always had the rule of thumb not to have any one customer, and really, ideally industry, but that's much more difficult, more than like 10 to 20% of our revenue base, right? 10 ideally. Right. So, but that requires diligent effort on sales and marketing. And, sounds like you found a really good formula with reps. And, so thank you for sharing that. I know that's, I know I see a greater disparity right now with shops that are super swamped busy and shops that are not. So, I think the ones that are more busy are more diversified and have a more aggressive sales and marketing posture. So it's good advice.
Right.
Awesome, Bill. Well, thank you for sharing everything with us today. If people want to reach out and connect with you, how would you recommend they do that? What's your website? Things of that nature.
Yeah, no, I think Pindel.com. We didn't go into it, but a couple other companies there, but I think Pindel is the core of it. One thing I've learned is the power of LinkedIn.
Oh, yes.
Algorithms there for posting. So, I'm very responsive to messaging outreaches through LinkedIn. I think that's a
I'll
great
make sure your profile is linked up in the show notes, and
Oh, please.
people
That'd be great.
can reach out to you and your other companies as well. So,
Yep. Awesome.
all right, Bill. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a real pleasure. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, and I know people learned from it. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Paul, thanks again, and really appreciate your software and the impact of that technology has had on our operations. So
It's
awesome.
our pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Good.
Take care.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye-bye.
Out here.